Shalom, everyone. This is Yafit Clymer, and you're listening to In Second Thought from Hadran. What is the connection between the tractate of Shevuot and the holiday, the festival of Shavuot? Shavuot is a very unique holiday in the Torah because it doesn't have a date. All we know is that we celebrate it at the 50th day after we count the Omer. After 7 weeks, that starts in Pesach, 49 days, the 50th day is Shavuot. What is the meaning of that? Like, what does the Torah wants to tell? What does the Torah want to tell us? That there is a festival that is named after weeks. Of course, we can also hear in the name Shavuot the number 7. Shavuot, a week, Shavua, it's number 7. Is there a connection? Is there a meaning for the fact that it's about 7? And if yes, what is it? So to begin our journey, let's look at the first place, the two places where the Torah mentions Chag HaShavuot, and I'm going to share the sources, and let's see. In two places, the Torah speaks about Chag HaShavuot, with emphasis of the number. And one is in Numbers, in Bemidbar, Uviyom HaBikurim, on the day of the first fruit, Yom HaBikurim, that's another name for Chag HaShavuot. When you bring the Nu Mincha, Beshavuotechem, your feast of weeks. The emphasis is this, it's true that it's the day of your first fruit, but it is also the feast of weeks. Mikra Kodesh, it's going to be a Yom Tov, it's going to be a holiday. You're not allowed to do any work. And the sacrifices that we bring in this day is 2 bulls, 1 ram, and 7 yearling lambs. Okay, again, there's an element of 7, even if the sacrifice of this holiday. The other place is in Devarim. And the Torah in Devarim is saying the following: Shiv'at Shavuot tispor lach ma'achel chermesh bakama. You shall count off 7 weeks. It's the counting. It's the number 7. Start to count the 7 weeks when the cycle is first put to standing grains. If you look at the Hebrew, the pasuk starts with seven weeks and it ends with 7 weeks. In other words, this is crucial for the Torah. It's emphasizing that this festival is connected deeply to the number 7 and the 7 weeks between Pesach and Chag HaShavuot. And here it says, B'meforash, it says explicitly, V'asita Chag Shavuot. That will be the feast of weeks. You're going to absorb the feast of weeks. And appreciate everything that God gave you. So why number 7? Like, why is it like it's such they're repeating the number 7? Why is number 7 so significant? Now, before we get to the number 7, which is so significant, we need to remember that we know number 7 in other places in Tanakh. It's not an odd number. It's not a number that we never hear about. And when we think about other number 7 that we know in Tanakh, of course, the first thing that comes to mind is obviously a week, Shavua, and God creates the world 6 days, and then God creates the world in the 7th day, and then at the 7th day, he rests in Shabbat. Shabbat is from the word Sheva. Also, we have the number 7 in the menorah. There's 7 kanim of the menorah. We have 7 years to get to Shemitah. Shemitah is the 7th year, is another significant act, mitzvah that we do. Paro, in his dream, he dreamed of 7 cows and 7 shibolim. We have Shiv'at Haminim, the 7 spices of the land of Israel. Chazal are speaking to us about Sheva mitzvot, the 7 mitzvot of Bnei Noach, and the 7 blessings of a wedding, and of course Shiv'ah, the 7 days after the burial of a family member, and the Mikdash had 7 gates, and we have 7 guests in Sukkot. And we have, for example, another beautiful example is number seven, signifies in Tanakh plentiful, for example, or a lot. And Shivatayim Yukam Kain, Kain is going to be um, um, revenged in plenty times, or maybe a nicer pasuk is Sheva Yipol Tzadik Vakam, a righteous person falls and he falls and he gets up, and he falls and he gets up seven times, and no matter how many times, he will still rise from his fall. So we have the number seven all around us. Of course, in the outside of the Torah world, we have seven symbols in music, and we have seven seas or oceans, and we have seven lands. So it's seven wonders of the world. Like, we have the number seven all around. Sometimes it has to do with mathematical research. Sometimes have to do with time. Sometimes has to do with other things. So when we want to go back in understanding why is the number seven so significant in Torah, we have to realize something else. And I'm going back to the sources, and I want to start with a midrash. The midrash is in Vayikra Rabbah is saying, Kol hashvi'im chavivin, all 7 months, all sevens are beloved. Now, Kol hashvi'im chavivin, all seven are beloved. The midrash is giving a long list of different seventh lists, or a person who is the seventh in a different list or genealogy, or seven synonyms to the word sky, or seven words to the word land, and counting many different sevens that they find in Yahadut, in the world as they understand it. But the interesting thing in the Midrash that it says that they're being liked. There's something about the seventh, but there's a deep fond towards it. And maybe what will help us understand is when we move on in our psukim and hear how Yirmiyahu, Jeremiah, is talking about our holiday, about Shavuot. And Yirmiyahu is saying the following: They have not said to themselves, let us revere the eternal our God, who gives the rain, the early and late rain in season, who keeps for our benefit the weeks appointed for harvest. Yirmiyahu Navi is saying that there's a kind of an unappreciative mode to people, and he's talking to the people of Israel, that are not feel full with gratitude towards God. And he's emphasizing the 7 weeks between Pesach and Shavuot. And in those 7 weeks, says Yirmiyahu, instead of realizing that, wow, God is giving us so much, and there's rain, and we harvest, and he's keeping nature in a way to benefit us. Instead, they turn their head to God, and they not saying, "Let us revere the eternal our God." And Rashi would say, the weeks of the laws of harvest, 7 weeks in which he ordained two ordinance of harvest, the ordinance of the Omer and the ordinance of the two breads. In other words, Rashi is saying, if we look what's happening in the 7 weeks, and there's so much that we can harvest, and we still have the harvesting for the Omer and the harvesting for the two loaves. And there's so much, and we need to live our life with appreciation. In other words, the 7 weeks of Sfirat HaOmer that starts with Pesach and ends with Shavuot has to do with us opening our eyes to what's beyond nature. It seems like everything is natural, but really we need to appreciate God for keeping that normal seasons and times happening, so we can benefit for them, and we can eat, not only serve the mikdash, but also harvest and eat our food. And the Malbim is continuing, and then he's saying, the weeks that imitate the harvest, that imitate the harvest, that there will be heat and sun during the days of the harvest and no rain, will fall at all time. In other words, look, God is giving us so many mitzvot, and it is giving it to us in the proper time. We can harvest when in a time of spring when there's no rain to to hurt us during that time. And in this too, he need him not to change the overall nature throughout the evil of our actions. Even though God could have changed the nature of nation through our evil actions, he doesn't do that, but to leave nature as is, and God as it is, and God, the weeks that imitate the harvest, will preserve for us that nature, that nature will preserve and not change. In other words, says the Malbi, that the weeks that Yirmiyahu is talking about, Shavuot, Chupot, is about laws of nature that are not going to change, that allow us to keep laws of Torah that God is asking from us. But there's something else that we can hear in this verse, is that the Shavuot here sounds like Masechet Shavuot, not like oath. And what is the connection between Shavuot and the counting of the 7 weeks, and during the time of Sfirat Omer, and keeping the laws of nature with oath? And I think the deep meaning of that is the fact that the oath that God gave us in the beginning of creation is that this is not going to change. When after the Mabul, the world is not going to be destroyed. Sun and moon and stars and winter and summer and harvesting. True, we need to pray for rain, but basically the rule of law is there. The law of nature is there, and it's not going to change. And what does that do? It gives us a peace of mind to understand that we're going to wake up tomorrow, and the world would look more or less the same, with the sun rising and the sun setting, and what we need to do in between, it's a different thing, but it gives us some kind of relief. And that all starts from the oath of God when he created the world through Shabbat. Shabbat, Sheva, is also a Shavuah. It's also an oath. And indeed, in the Torah, we find that Shavuah is connected also to the number 7. And it's something, by the way, that is, we see it in the ancient Near East around us, where our ancestors worked in Mesopotamia and in Canaan, that the oath between a man and his fellow, and between two people, were considered to be a very serious, deep thing. If someone is being chased or someone is being charged with a bad thing that he did, and he swears that he didn't do it, the law takes it very seriously. When God is swearing that the world is not going to change and the weeks will continue, and during those 7 weeks we'll be able to harvest and keep nature intact and allow us to live in the world without thinking, it's an oath that is allowing us to enjoy the world. The oath that we find in Sefer Bereshit is a perfect example for that, because in the story of Yitzchak and the people of Gerar, after they have some dispute and misunderstanding and fighting over the wells, and then they make peace, and they come to Yitzchak, and Yitzchak is made them a feast, and they ate and drank. And then early in the morning, they exchanged oath. They exchange oath of a yishavu, like the highest thing that people can do between them when there's a lot of fraction, is to swear that they're going to keep that peace, that they're going to keep the covenant, the brit between the two of them, between the two sides. And if we can trust each other in terms of the oath, then all the structure of humanity is going to be ripped apart, and there will be nothing to lie on in terms of human order. So here, when they swear to each other, that's a very strong thing. And I would like to say that the root of the power of our ability to give oath, to exchange oath, comes from us learning from God. That when He gives us an oath, He's not going to change it. And we saw it in creation, and we saw it with Abraham, and we saw it in receiving the Torah in the festival of Shavuot after counting 7 weeks, after understanding that we're standing there because of the strong and unchangeable oath that God gave us as people, and then to Abraham, and then to us as nations. And then when the servants of Yitzchak are coming and they say, look, we found a well, and we this time we dug a well and we found water. And Yitzchak called that well, he named it Sheba, or if you see the Hebrew, Shiva. Now there was no number 7 here. There was just a Shevuot. There was only an oath. And it's very clear that Yitzchak is naming that well an oath after the oath that they exchange with the people of Gerar. But then it also it named the city of Be'er Sheva to this day. Ken, so Be'er Sheva, there's a machloket. What is it named after the Shiva, after the well, the oath, or after 7 kvasim, a 7 lamb of Abraham? But nevertheless, the connection between 7 and oath here, even under a city that is named after that, is very, very strong. The oath is something which is above nature. It's something that it happens between two parts, two people, two nations, a nation and God, that should keep us sustained, or should keep us quiet, that even if we do wrong, the strong, stable side of God is still there, and we are living, from the power of that oath. An interesting thing that Zechariah, the prophet, is showing us is that when he describes what are the things that God expects us to do as human being, is these are the things you are to do: speak the truth to one another, render true and perfect justice in your gates. Now, this motive repeats itself over and over again in the Torah and in the Tanakh. And the opposite is, not a single one of you shall contrive evil against another, or do not love perjury, because all those are things that I hate, declare God. And I would like you to see the Hebrew, because it says Shvuat Sheker, again, a false oath. One of the things that can destroy a society is when people don't value connections, don't value covenant, don't value oath between each other. Because if I take it lightly and I lie, either about what I did or about what I'll do to you, and you think I'm a peaceful person, and then God forbid I do the opposite, this is bad for society, and this is not how to be people who carry the image of God amongst them. So the oath, the Shevuah and Shavuot, which is the festival when we receive the oath from God, and we together exchange oath in Matan Torah. And we create a covenant. And part of the covenant is not only what we do towards God, but it's what we do towards each other. And if we want society to be society of justice and peace, one of the things is that we need to keep away from is false oath, and understand that the strength of oath is a strength that connects us to Matan Torah. It's a strength that connects us to the creation of the world. And indeed, in the tractate of Shevuot, in page 47, there's a very nice saying there. And Rabbi Yossi rules in the Mishnah that in the case where both sides are suspect and cannot take an oath, the oath returned to its place. Now, it's in the context. It's definitely something legal, but the Gemara is asking very beautifully, to where did it return? What do you mean Shvuah, as the oath has an entity or life as of itself? And there's really there's a machloket between our sages in Bavel and our sages in Eretz Israel. What does that mean by the oath returning to its place? And Rav Ami said that our sages in Babylon say the oath returned to Sinai, where God administrated an oath to the Jewish people that they would keep the mitzvot of the Torah, including the prohibition against robbery. And the litigant who is robbing and the litigant who is robbing the other will be punished by God, not the court. And the sages of Eretz Israel say the oath returned to the one who was initially liable to take it, etc. In other words, Eretz Israel are talking about the legal system. The sages of Bavel is also talking about the legal system, but they're saying we're moving it to the ultimate system. But I want to offer another thing, that the oath go back to Sinai, because if we forget that the root of the oath is Sinai, is Matan Torah, and we take it lightly, then nothing is going to be at place. But if we understand that the root of the oath is the ultimate oath between God and the people of Israel, the covenant between God and the people of Israel, and we understand that one manifestation of that is oath between people that are willing to do it in order to have a peaceful and orderly community and society and relationship between people, then it's okay. But if we forget it, we have to go back and remind ourselves what's the root of the oath. And I want to finish with beautiful words by of Jonathan Sachs, may he rest in peace, to Parashat Emor, the parasha of the holidays, one of the parashat of the holidays. And Rav Sachs is saying the following: we are spiritual beings, but we are also physical beings. We cannot be spiritual, close to God all the time. That is why there is secular time as well as holy time. But one day in seven, we stop working and enter the presence of God of creation. Shabbat, of course. On certain days of the year, the festivals, we celebrate God in history. Shabbat is a time above time. Again, it's a godly time, but it's a time that reminds us that in our life there's not just holiness and not just physicality, but they're both. So once in a week we can breathe the spiritual, and once in few times in our festivals, in our holy days of the Chagim, we're celebrating God of the history, because we see it in agriculture, and we see it with the sacrifices, and we see it with the seasons of the year. The holiness of Shabbat is determined by God alone, because He alone created the universe. The holiness of the festivals, particularly determined by us. We say Mekadesh Israel v'Yom HaZemanim. We also we are the one who fixed the calendar, because history is a partnership between us and God. But in two respect, they are the same. They are both times of meeting, moed, and they are both times when we feel ourselves called, summoned, invited as God guest, Mikra'ei Kodesh. We can't always be spiritual. God is giving us a material world with which to engage. But on the seventh day of the week, and originally 7 days in the year, God of Yom Tovs, God gives us dedicated times in which we feel the closeness of Shekhinah and are bathed in the radiance of God's love. And with this beautiful description of what's happening in our holy days and in our holy days of the year, I want to sum and go back to the idea that the connection between the tractate of Shevuot, of oath, and the Chag of Shavuot relies on an understanding that the big thing that happened, when we left Mitzrayim, was the promise of God to Avraham and to us. And when we stood in Ma'amad Har Sinai and received the Torah, that was another way of exchanging oath with God, and that should accompany us and be with us all the way in our life, not only during during the year, but during our lives, understanding that the highest way that we can behave to other people is like God is behaving towards us in a way of covenant, in a way of respecting each other, in a way of peace, and not, God forbid, in a way of false oath. And the oath is coming to present that there's a deeper move deeper motion that moves the world and human society, and that comes from the Tselem Elokim that God gave us when He created the world.